What is up, all you beautiful, wonderful YouTube people? Team Badman here, and welcome to Bad Builds, where Team Badman goes over some of their own deck builds that they've been testing out and using, just so you can get an idea of what we're playing, what we've been messing around with, and maybe it'll give you some ideas for some of your own decks, maybe give you an idea of an MP Mastery combination you guys want to try, or some cards to consider that you weren't running in your deck before. If you've watched any of our prior videos, especially the table talk of the Set 4 Masteries, you will know my excitement over the Red Ruthless Mastery. It's really nice to see Red kind of get away from this idea of speed anger, MPPV, and get a little bit more of a beat-centric kind of idea to approach it. Especially with some pretty nice aggressive cards in red. There's plenty there to work with, and it really kind of opens up some of the older MPs who are having, who may have had some issues with the whole MPBV thing. Red Freeze is a good example of that. God Goku, and the example that I've got here for the deck I'm presenting, Red Turles. Turles was, a really big kind of hype point when the movie collection came out. Being able to shut off endurance was super nice. The damage buffs was great. But there just wasn't a whole lot of synergy with many of the masteries that were out that he could use at the time. And usually there was a better choice that would be run in the deck, mainly because Turles' major levels 1 and 3 don't actually have an attack on them. But the Red Ruthless Mastery, helps gear towards that very beat-centric side, specifically with physicals. So I'd like to present that to you guys. This is Red Ruthless Turles, physical beats, and let's go on ahead and jump right in. Turles has a pretty nice stack going for him. Level 1, you get the +2 damage buff to all style, damage can't be endured. It's a great starting point, especially with, really nice red physicals, such as Red Shoulder Grab or Red Shattering Leap. And it works very well with Mastery, which gives you an extra +2 buff, so that's an automatic +4 on all of your styled physicals. Great thing to have. Turles' level 2 has been kind of panned before for being, really unexciting. 2 stages for 5 stages isn't a particularly strong attack, especially for an energy. And the hit effect, while gaining 2 anger, is nice and use a critical damage effect. It wasn't super stellar. One advantage that I find having it in Ruthless, especially with Evolution out, is that it works around Android 18. Android 18 is really going to kind of shut this deck down, shut down all of those physical damage buffs that you've got, and turn all of your really powerful beat attacks into not very much at all. So being able to have a way to cause stage damage without having to resort to those physical attacks right away is a nice thing to have. The hit effect can force 18 pay extra stages as well, which can push Android 18 below that range where her effect applies, and lets you bring out the full power of all of your physical attacks. Level 3 is kind of the spot where you want to be, and with all the anger cards in red, that's really easy to accomplish. +3 stages to all of your physical attacks, not just styled, and the damage gets shut off, or endurance rather. And you can also banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's discard pile. It's not as great as Pulverize or Devastating Blow, or even cards like Red Duck in regards to discard pile hate, but it's still nice nonetheless, especially if you get it right after you've hit your opponent with an attack, milled out some really valuable cards to get rid of. Get rid of some styled attacks, get rid of named cards, get rid of time, cards like that. And level 4 rounds it out nicely with a physical attack totally dependent on what your opponent has for stages. Both stages and life card damage in that, as well as being unable to endure it, can cause some very serious damage in the end game. But the disadvantage with it is that it shuts off your own endurance as well, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword, kind of risky, especially if you get caught in really bad combat. It's not as powerful as 3 in my mind, but it's still a nice place to end, and if you manage to get up to level 4, your opponent has just a little bit more to worry about. So I'm going to jump into the build starting with drills, because there's one drill in this deck that has made just a huge difference and really helps facilitate that physical beat side of things, and that is Hidden Power Drill. I have one Hidden Power Drill in the deck. Being able to force your opponent down to that 5 stages is really, really valuable, especially considering between Turles' level 1 or level 3 and the Mastery, your styled physicals are virtually guaranteed to cause stage lock right away. It's much easier to get around Android 18 with that. And while Turles isn't super strong at 5 stages above, usually sitting in about the B or C bracket, there's still a whole lot you can do with it. It's extremely valuable in this deck, and if you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend it. I'm also running one Quickness Drill. Quickness Drill helps facilitate the Mastery. You can set up a styled card to banish so that you can get the +2 damage buff, and you can get an extra card out of the discard. Even if you don't want that card, you can always pitch that card to the Mastery to use the top attack. Or if you've got an attack on the top of the discard pile that you want to use, you can use Quickness Drill to pitch a card that you don't necessarily want, get an extra card back into your hand so it breaks even, and you can still use that attack later by utilizing the main power of the Mastery. It's nice to have. It doesn't always come out, but if it does, it's really kind of nice, and I think it's a bit of an underrated drill at the moment. It may see more play given that Android 20 likes freestyle drills and that there's some more synergy with Red Ruthless. It's done pretty well for me so far. And lastly, I have one Red Forward Stance drill, arguably Red's best drill, pay 1 Anger for an automatic Omni block. It's a little bit riskier now with some of the attacks that came out in Evolution that can only be stopped by physical combat or energy combat cards. But in most cases, it's a nice backup to have just in case you're not drawing into any of your blocks, or if you get caught in a little bit of a rough situation where you may take more damage than you want to. And considering this isn't an MPPV kind of build, you can use that anger as a resource, and it's a lot more valuable in this case. On next to events. Events have been kind of pared down and kept to kind of a minimum in my book. All of them have great value to them. I'm running 2 stare downs. I was at 3 of this before, but it was a little bit harder to find room for some of the other attacks in the deck, so I pared it down to 2. It's still nice for being able to drop an opponent's block out of their hands so that you're almost guaranteed to hit with some of your physicals, or get rid of an attack that may be imposing to you, something like that. I've also got 3 red stops in the deck, mainly because of the drills in the deck, being able to pull them out of the discard or the banish zone, whether they've been taken off the field by blue betrayal or an orange stare down, something like that is nice. And also, it's an automatic Omni block. Sure, it's an event, so it does risk getting sphered, but in most cases, the advantages of an event Omni block will outweigh the risk of getting sphered. It's comfortably at a 3 of because of that. I'm also running 2 red Restriction in the deck. Restriction is a really, really nice card for this, forcing your opponent to either attack or pass, so it shuts down a lot of those board control kind of ideas. It stops orange from utilizing some of their drills. It stops black from using the power-ups or the declarations, cards like that. And it still breaks even on the hand advantage. You get to draw 2 cards, but you play it from your hand, then you have to discard 1. There are plenty of cards that you can discard that give value. You can discard Sacrifice for 2 anger. You could discard a card to help set up the Mastery. So it's got plenty of value. I cut it down to 2 of. It was at 3 before, and I thought 3 was kind of excessive for it. So 2's a comfortable spot. And of course, time is a warrior's tool, self-explanatory, block and attack, block all attacks, remainder of combat. It basically has to go in. Setups have been stripped to the bare minimum. I'm just running 2 Visiting the Past, basically for the same reason time is a warrior's tool. Get any card out of the discard pile, especially if your opponent is entering combat. That's almost immediate hand advantage for you. It's too nice to not have. I was running 2 Red Relaxation before, and the stage gain was nice, the extra card from the discard pile was nice, but I found it didn't get quite as much mileage as Restriction, and in most cases I would just rather have an extra attack, so I cut those out. They may go back in the future, but that's still yet to be seen. Next is energy combat cards, and I've got a few different energy combat attacks in here. Because they're going to throw the opponent off, because they're going to see Turles and think it's going to be very, very physical heavy. So it's nice to catch them off guard sometimes with some strong energy attacks. I've got 3 red left bolts in the deck because they have great synergy with Mastery and with Turles' power. It's, you know, a 3-stage attack for 5 life cards, all damage is banished, and with Turtles is 1 or 3, it's unendurable. You get to draw the bottom card of your discard pile, which is great in conjunction with the Mastery, because you can pitch a card, put it on the bottom of your life deck to play an attack from the discard, and then get it right back with the red left bolt. That's nice to have. The 3-stage cost is a little bit steep, especially when Hidden Power Drill is in play, but the damage being banished and the extra hand advantage is too nice to not have. I've got 2 red Energy Blast in the deck. Gives a little bit of board control. Get you know, Android 20 Scouting Drill off the field, or Orange Hiding Drill, or you can always knock an ally off the field. It's useful against Captain Ginyu or against any of the Android allies, Frieza. So it's a little bit of a board control, which is nice. I'm running 2 red Static Shot in the deck. You know, 2 for 5 is always nice. It might be a little bit redundant with Turtles' power, considering that it shuts off endurance when you're already shutting off endurance as it is. But the hit gain to anger is really nice. It's a little bit weaker in Ruthless Mastery as opposed to Enraged, where you get the extra anger from using critical damage effect. But it's still a really nice energy attack to have, and it's even more valuable if you get kind of stuck on level 2, where you only have endurance shut off for Turtles' energy attack. So it kind of keeps the flow going. And lastly, I'm running 2 red Rage for energy attacks. This is mainly for the flat stage damage, which, as I mentioned before, is an issue with Android 18. 1 for 3 stages isn't super strong, but being able to get an attack out of the discard pile by removing a card in your hand is nice, especially if you've got a not so useful card. You know, if you drew into Restriction, which you didn't necessarily want to use, or maybe you've got an energy attack that you can't put to use because it costs too many stages. You can always just throw Rage, pitch that out, and get a card right out of the discard pile, which is nice. It is banished after use, and the hit 1 anger is alright. I've kind of left it 2 for that. I may even take it out entirely, but we're going to see. Energy blocks are pared down. I've got 3 red Sacrifice, mainly for the discard effect. You know, discard gain 2 anger, but in the event of an emergency, it's also an energy block, which is useful. And then 3 red Energy Defensive Stance. You know, energy block, raise your anger 1 level. It totally contributes to red, so there's some value there. And lastly is Physical Combats, which is the meat and potatoes of the entire deck. In my mind, you can't build a red physical deck without including red Shoulder Grab. I've got 3 red Shoulder Grabs in the deck. Attack table +3 is a pretty sizable attack, especially when the Mastery and Turtles' power comes into play. Raise your anger, and all of your attacks are considered to deal critical damage. That's great in conjunction with the Mastery, which, if you banished out a styled card, adds hit, lower your opponent's anger 1 level. So you can use successful attacks to lower your opponent's anger 2 levels for a degree of anger control, or you can pop off an ally, capture a Dragon Ball to prolong combat if you need to. It's got plenty of value to it, and it's an auto-include in just about any red deck in my book. I'm running 3 red Collision, which is from the new set. Table +3 once again. It's got 2 endurance, which is really nice to have. You know, it raises anger automatically. If you banish it out for the Mastery, it also raises your anger. You can stack your discard pile, which is useful. The only disadvantage in my book is that it's banished after use, which kind of sucks, but it's a plenty strong attack and very useful to have. I've got 2 red Heel Kick. Being able to pull an attack card out of the discard pile by paying anger goes back to the anger's a resource idea, and attack table +2 isn't too bad of an attack. It is banished after use, and you need to have the anger to really get the most mileage out of it anyway, so it's kind of down to 2 of. I run 3 red Face Break in the deck. Attack table +4 is one of red's most powerful physical attacks. You can discard a card from your hand to draw a card. It's got some great synergy with a bunch of the other cards. Works with Mastery, works with Sacrifice, works with getting dead cards out of your hand. It's a very powerful attack and does a whole lot of work. I've got 2 red Mule Kicks in the deck, mainly as an answer to attached cards like Black Capture or Wall Breaker, but it's not too bad a physical attack on its own. Attack table +2 is pretty sizable. the automatic anger gain. It's mainly used as an answer for those attached cards. I am running 3 red chops in the deck. Red chop provides some flat stage damage, which is primarily based on your anger. A base of 3 is alright. With the Mastering with Turles, it bumps up to 7 stages total, which is nice. And then if you have 3 or 4 anger, it can do a pretty serious amount of damage. It's been pretty useful to me, especially in the 18 matchup, being able once again to work around the loss of damage buffs. So it's done plenty of work. It's also got Endurance 2 on it as well, which is really, really nice to have, considering that red doesn't have a good way to get cards back into the life deck, so every bit of endurance counts. I've got 2 red double strikes in the deck. This was at 3 before, but I decided to cut it down to 2 due to the lack of real power in it. It's only AT stages, and since we're not going for an MPPV approach with this, I decided to cut it down in favor of some of the stronger attacks. Nonetheless, it's nice having 2 attacks on the board with the extra buffs that can be applied later on in the game. It still does a serious amount of damage. I've got 2 Sagacious Strike in the deck. Table plus 3 is nice, an automatic critical damage effect for added control. Even if I want to, I could just have it do no damage, so I've got the guaranteed critical damage effect should I ever need it. It's also a reliable answer to attached cards, along with the mule kicks and any attack after shoulder grab has been applied, so there's plenty of answers for attached cards. 2 red Shattering Leaps in the deck. It's a little bit off physical in that it actually requires stages to use, but attack table plus 4 is powerful, and allowing it to stay in play a second time if it hits is really, really nice. Once Turles 1 and the Red Ruthless Mastery come into play, that's attack table plus 8, which is going to do some serious damage no matter who gets hit with it. The reason it's down to 2 is because of the stage cost, and it's really easy for it to become a dead card on the field if you don't have a physical block, and you end up getting hit for sizable physical attack like Blue Lunge or Black Overpowering Attack. In the last stand attacks, I have 3 Devastating Blow, Anger Control once again, which is always nice, Discard Pile Control, which is great, especially in the Namekian matchup, which is something that you really want. Being able to get allies out of the discard pile in non-tag team builds is nice. And it's excellent tech. It should be in just about any deck right now, especially with the Speed Anger Namekian idea coming back. And it's very, very comfortable at 3 in this deck. With physical blocks, I'm once again at 6, same as the energy. I'm running 3 red blocking hand, of course gain 2 stages, raising anger 2 levels. It's an excellent block for physicals. And I'm currently running 3 red cross block, which is another new one from Evolution. I'm primarily using it because it allows you to stack and tack either on the top of the discard or on the top of the life deck. In most cases, I'll put cards back on the life deck. If I'm worried about taking some serious damage, I'll stack one with Endurance, or if it's near the end of combat, I'll stack a powerful attack, so I've got that in my hand come next turn. The disadvantage over some of the other blocks is that it lacks Endurance, which is kind of a bummer. I may replace in the future with the Red Resourceful block. The Endurance 3 is phenomenal, and the leveling and de-leveling is useful, especially if you're taking a whole lot of stage damage or if you can't really throw any energy attacks. So that's nice to have. A couple things I had before and decided to omit were Tree of Might. I did run Tree of Might for the extra damage buff and being able to pull out some freestyle drills, but most of the time it just became a dead card in my hand. I would draw it during combat, or it would get taken out really early on by some kind of board hate, and it just didn't do a whole lot for me in comparison to how it would in other builds, so I decided to cut that out entirely. And also, I cut out Wallbreaker completely. Wallbreaker was originally my primary means of doing at least some kind of anger control, specifically with the Enraged Mastery, but with Ruthless gaining lower your opponent's anger 1 level on a style attack hit, as well as the propensity to deal a lot of critical damage and lower your opponent's anger, it's not quite as necessary, especially since it doesn't get buffs from Turles 1 or the Red Ruthless Mastery. Turles 3 it still gets a buff from, but in most cases your red style attacks are still going to be stronger. And in matches where your opponent isn't actually running Anger, there's just not a whole lot of value to it. So I decided to cut it out entirely and make room for some other attacks. So that is it with Turles the Ruthless. It's been a great deck for me so far. It does a whole lot of work. I've been really enjoying it. If you've been having any qualms of deciding to run Red Turles, I would completely recommend trying it. It's a whole lot of fun, and hopefully this gave you some ideas for how you would like to build your own. And that's about it. If you guys liked it, go on ahead and click like down below. Feel free to leave a comment. If you guys didn't like it, go on ahead and click the dislike button down below and leave a comment as to why you didn't like it. We're always looking for feedback, and we would love to hear your guys' opinions. Be sure to keep an eye out on the channel. We are going to have more bad builds coming up very soon in the future, as well as some new matches, hopefully with the new masteries and the new MPs. So there's going to be plenty to look forward to. And once again, guys, stay bad. Thanks for watching.